Hey Bobby, can you hear me okay?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you fine. Just one thing, I've added a new slide, which is like towards the end before the Q&A. So
Okay.
the situational judgment bit, if you just hand it over to me, I've added just a promotional code for that. Can you refresh your Menti and see if you can see that towards the end? It's just about the UCAT live days.
Yes, I'll do that now.
It's fine. I'm just going to start live streaming in a minute, but as soon as I do, if you can turn your camera on and I'll put all the students in, there's about
Yeah.
70 of them there. I'll just make you co-host.
Yeah, of course. I'm going to have to re-download the slides, I think.
Sorry?
I think I might need to re-download the slides. So let me do that.
Okay, cool. Um, it's just a Menti meter. You do have access to that one, right?
Yes, I do have access, but it's just sometimes it doesn't like to work, and today is one of those days. So I have to copy it to my account, if that makes sense.
Ah, okay, okay, okay. All right. That's fine, that's fine. I'll let the students in and then if you want to turn your camera on, then I'll quickly just introduce them all, just so they don't
Yeah,
start
perfect.
panicking that it's not running. And then whenever you get started, whenever you're ready, we'll get started, okay?
Perfect.
Hi everyone. So just bear with us for about a couple of minutes. We're just getting started. We're just waiting for a few more students to join. Just a few things that I wanted to say to everyone. So welcome to our first webinar for 2024. Obviously, this is, we're just finishing with exams in school. A lot of you are getting started for the UCAT this summer. So just a few things that before we start, just as ground rules, if you want to sort of speak or contribute, you can ask to unmute yourself. So if you hover over your name on Zoom, there's a button that says ask to unmute. So please do click on that if you wish to speak and sort of participate in the Q&As. The second thing is, of course, we will have lots of opportunities for you to ask questions towards the end, but this is a session more or less where we'll just be introducing you to what the UCAT is, what different sections there are, and giving you some basic sort of information about the UCAT as well as the application cycle this year. Bobby will be hosting the session today. She's one of our top tutors, and I'm sure you can see her at the minute. But yes, she has been teaching with us for quite a few years. I'll let Bobby introduce herself. If you want to introduce yourself, Bobby.
Hi everyone. As I've just said, I'm Bobby. I'm one of the tutors with Study Mind, Medic Mind, and I've been tutoring for a while now. I'm also a medical student myself, so I'm currently at University of Oxford in my first clinical year. So hopefully I'll be able to help you guys out. Okay, I think we're still just waiting for a few people to enter, but after that we'll get started if that's okay. Okay, so I hope the weather's treating everyone nicely. You can't hear me.
I think I can hear you fine. If anybody else can't hear Bobby, would you be happy to either Yeah, I think the other students can hear you fine. If
Okay.
you can hear Bobby fine, can you put a thumbs up or sort of react in on Zoom if that's all right? Yep, I
So
think
if
most
you,
people can hear us.
yeah, so I'm just going to put a message to the student who couldn't.
Adia, I'll just have a look what's happening here. So Adia, I think you haven't joined audio. So if you reconnect to audio, if that's fine, there's normally shows a mic if you have done. So just make sure everybody's joined in to audio. I think there's a few of you who haven't. Um, oh, I just realized they can't hear me when I'm saying that. But anyways,
Okay,
okay. So,
let's get started then. Will the meeting
yes.
recording be available? Yes, the recording will be made available to you later. So don't worry about that at all.
We're
Great,
also posting it to YouTube as well, guys. So I'll post a link for that towards the end.
amazing. Let me start sharing my screen. presenting. Cool. So we're using Menti for these sessions. So if you want to just use the code to join, and once you have joined, if you can just react to the Menti, there's like a thumbs up icon just to let me know that people are able to access it okay. Perfect. It looks like everyone's able to access that. That code should be up the entire time. And as I said, I put it in the chat too. So we're going to be talking about UCAT, which is the only medical test now for undergraduate medicine. There used to be the BMAT as well, and we'll talk about this a bit more later, but that test has been discontinued because the company that was running it has chosen to stop running it. So that's why UCAT is more used now, I suppose. So the first thing I want to ask you guys is, what do you already know about the UCAT? You're here because you've at least heard of it, and you might be interested in applying for medicine or dentistry. But what else do we know? I'll give you a few minutes just to respond to that.
Guys, if you want to join the Menti, you can use the code at the top. Otherwise, you can put anything you want to say in the Zoom chat as well, as we're looking at both.
So lots of people commenting on different types of sections, the number of sections, the scoring, that computer test, yes, that is important to know. It's really hard. It can be really hard, and I'm not going to lie to you. If you don't put in some work, then you're going to find it incredibly difficult. But that's kind of what I'm here for, is to try and demystify some of that process and to make it easier for you. Stressful. Okay, I'd like to know a bit more about what exactly is stressful about the exam. Obviously, I've done it, so I do know it can be, but what is it that's worrying you? Confusing. Timed, good. SGT. Yeah, it's not subject type exams. Is there a particular type of exam that is correctly identified by most of you as an aptitude test? And it's supposed to be looking at particular skills, particular personality traits that are thought to be good for studying medicine. Because medicine itself is quite a complex subject, and it's one that you need to have a little bit of everything to be able to work with. Time pressure. Okay, so I think what might be what's on most of people's minds is how much time do I have and how do I manage my time, which we will come on to. Okay. Had a lot of responses. And I'm just checking the chat. Abstract reasoning patterns. Yes, I did not enjoy those myself, but we got there. VR timing. Yes, that's a big one. It's all about exam technique. Great. So I think they're all very similar, your answers here. So what I will do is move us on now. If you have anything else you wanted to add, please feel free to put it in the Zoom chat. Okay, so I have a feeling that a lot of you will be worried about at least verbal reasoning. That's fine. But I would really appreciate if I can get an idea of how you feel in all the sections. There tends to be a very clear pattern, and every year it's interesting to see the same sections are the ones that people struggle with. Okay. Situational judgment seems to be one people are quite concerned about. That's okay. It's a type of subcategory, I guess, you don't really get taught in school. It's one that you've got to work your way through. Okay, decision making. Interesting. So we'll let a few more answers come through. So far we've had 30. So someone said, I don't understand decision making and how it's worded. That's fine, we can work through that together. It is worded in a way that's supposed to make you stop and think and to work out the problem. All of these questions that you're going to be faced with, none of it's a trick. It's all about you deconstructing the question and trying to work efficiently. Abstract reasoning being a concern because of how do you revise. That's okay. Again, we'll talk about it. And for verbal reasoning. So yeah, it's interesting that we've had quite this range of answers, but they're all about the same concern at the moment, which is fine. As you go through studying for the UCAT, you'll notice that you have your own strengths and weaknesses. and you can target your revision there. No, you won't have been taught anything to do with abstract reasoning before. It is a new thing, and it's about your ability really to pattern recognize. Again, we'll talk more about it, but it's something that you also develop in medicine in terms of disease pattern. So it does all link, even though it is really frustrating that you have this strange exam. Stem cells banding, good score. Again, we'll go through all the details. Thank you all for sharing how you're feeling about the UCAT. I promise you, you will get through it. Do you have any questions to start with, other than the ones we've already picked up on? So someone said, the med school I'm looking at state they don't consider abstract reasoning is this common. I think because it's so different from anything that most people at GCSE or A level have done, some medical schools are a little bit more understanding of that and lenient, so they say that's okay. And I think I've seen a couple of different universities that do what you just said. And others will say, oh, we emphasize verbal reasoning, for example. In terms of which section is weighed more in the application, that's going to be dependent on the university you're applying to. So let's go back to the Menti. Gosh. Okay. Sometimes I don't know if my studying technique is right. Is it good to study more than one section, then reflect on what you got wrong, and then try again the next day? I will say that studying technique is going to be individual. So the advice I'm going to give you is very general, and you need to take it with a pinch of salt and adapt it to who you are as a person. There's no such thing as a right or wrong technique for studying. There are definitely more efficient ways of doing it. I think if you're going to study one section at a time, because you feel like you need to focus on your particular section to understand it first, that's a really good approach. But if you're someone who finds it hard to just focus on one thing and needs multiple things, maybe someone with ADHD or something, then actually looking at one or two sections a day might be better for you. So that's the bit sort of personal. The reflection, absolutely. Please, 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 whenever you do a practice or revision session, write down what did I learn from what went wrong? What did I learn from what went right? Because that's going to allow you to target your strengths and your weaknesses so that you have the best opportunity when it comes to the exam. Okay. Is it forest green? Not really sure what that question is, but thank you. Okay. How long should you revise for ideally? We'll talk about this, but you can probably revise consistently for about 2 months before the exam. That's not every single day. That's maybe once every couple of days. And then the 2 weeks before the exam, I'd say that's your focus time. But again, that will be discussed. Good score to aim for. This depends on if you're applying for the undergraduate or the graduate course. If you're applying for the graduate course, they sort of expect a bit higher. But if you're applying for the undergraduate course, you can probably get between 600 and 700 per section, and that will be a good score. It also, again, depends on the university you're applying to. So if you're applying to, for example, I know Oxford has swapped to UCAT now for the undergraduate course. If you're applying to that, I would suggest you probably want to get a higher end score, so 700s per section. Whereas if you're applying for a different university that may put less emphasis on the admissions test, I'm trying to think of one. I think Cardiff might weight it a little bit more towards your personal statement interview, but I need to double check that. So please check yourself before taking my word for it. But for that, if it is the case that they weigh it less, then you could probably get lower sort of 600, 650 type scores. Cool. How long do you need to revise? We've answered that question. What the stigma is this? Okay. Why am I getting bad scores? I'm insecure. I've done multiple questions, but I only seem to fail. For the person who said this, firstly, well done for keeping going. It's really difficult when you keep finding it that you're not answering questions correctly. It does get easier with time and practice. I can't say without having sat down and watched your exam technique and checked your understanding of different things. But I think that skill that someone mentioned earlier of reflection would be really useful. So when you've done an exam question, Ask yourself, do I understand what the answer is and why it's that? Where did I go wrong? Try to do that for a few questions and see if that makes a difference. Does it? Okay, I'm gonna request that people stick to putting sensible questions in the chat and in the Menti because I want to make sure this is the most efficient use of your time. Yes, 2 months is great. Haven't started studying yet. How much would you recommend I approach it? Like how much per day, etc. Per day, I think 1 or 2 hours. It depends on when you book your exam because you can sit it at various points. So book your exam and then you want to do 2 weeks before that, solid revision, like 2, maybe 3 hours a day. And then even further before that, you can probably do an hour a day here and there. The marking is confusing, but we'll get there. Medify or MedEntry? I've not heard of MedEntry. I did use Medify a little bit, but I have to say you don't have to pay for resources. There are also question banks online which are free. When is best to book? That's an individual decision, but I will discuss the options with you. Okay, quantitative reasoning is not the same as maths. It's very much applying the information, and you may have noticed that actually in A-level maths and in GCSE maths, it's less about application of knowledge and more can you recall this information, can you do this calculation. So that might be why you're finding it difficult. Top percentiles we'll talk about. Study techniques are best. Again, this is really individual to the person. But I think firstly you need to understand the sections and then have a go at a mock or a practice set of questions. See what you're struggling with most and target those areas. That's my general advice. Yes, so UCAT isn't used on its own to decide whether or not you'll have a place at medical school. It is a component of the decision-making process. So it is possible to have an okay UCAT score, great interview, great personal statement, and still be accepted. I will say the higher your UCAT score, the better chance you have because they use that as part of the ranking system to make it as fair as possible. Talk about that. I wouldn't panic if you haven't already started revising. Just make sure you keep in mind when you're booking how much time you want to be giving yourself. Please don't be put off studying for UCAT or going to medical school if you haven't studied A-level maths. It is not necessary. It can be useful, but actually all you need to be good at for UCAT is mental maths itself. What resources would you need? Well, we'll talk about some resources you can use later, but the first one I would always point people to is the UCAT Consortium's website because they have got practice questions and things on there. So just to clarify, there are actually 5 sections for the UCAT, and I think it's best to do well in all of them. But I mean, if you're aiming to get about the same in all of them, that's still good.
So first of all, guys, no inappropriate comments if that's all right. It's just not acceptable to have those. And Bobby, I think we should move on to the next.
Yeah, I'm going to, don't worry.
That's all right. It's you guys are all applying for medicine. It's inappropriate to just even ask those kind of questions. Anyways, we'll move on to the next few slides. If that's fine. We'll have time for the Q&A at the end.
Yep. So I hope I've answered most of the questions. I tried to sort of skip through and pick the most commonly asked. So the questions we're going to talk about today, when is the UCAT? How many sections there are? Again, these things people have asked. How do I revise? When do I revise? And which universities do I need to worry about? So female has been disregarded, so I'm going to draw a line through that for the purposes of conversation. The UCAT, you can sit this between July and September, so that's 3 months that you can think about booking in. I would say book early to get a slot that you want, and then you can work back and figure out how much revision you need to do. So the UCAT comes first. Your personal statement will be due in October 15th. That's usually the deadline. So make sure you're working on this as well during your summer break. And yes, it says here your deadline's here. Interviews typically will be from November to April, but I know some people have had them as late as May. So no stress about that, please. And then A levels. Your UCAT might go terribly. You can resit your UCAT as many times as you like. Your A levels, you need to try and get them to the right level on the first time. A lot of medical schools don't take resets. So I'd say if you are really worried about UCAT, think about taking a gap year and doing UCAT the following year. Okay? Focus on getting the A level grades you need. Let me get rid of that line. Okay. Work experience. I'm going to hand over to Ashley for a minute just to talk about this.
So just really quickly, guys, with work experience, it's something that is quite useful for your application. A lot of you will have finished GCSEs now, and some of you have done your AS level. Some of you will be doing a gap year. The summertime is a really good time to think about these opportunities, and some of you might be emailing hospitals or clinics around you to sort of gather those work experience opportunities. We do have some that we host in central London. As you can see, there's a 5-day timetable. We also do it for 2 weeks as well. For you guys, over the next 24 hours, we are offering £150 off. And the code that you can use, actually, it's not on the slide there, but I'll put it in the chat right now. It's experience 150. So you can use this on the website and you can get £150 off the work experience. Now, in terms of what happens on this work experience, as you can see, there is a little bit of detail on here, but we will give you a certificate. We can also put it onto Unifrog and provide references for you when you apply to medical school. It's quite useful for your interviews as well. They will ask you questions like why you want to do medicine, what your sort of knowledge is about the different specialties, what a doctor does in their day-to-day lives. And you can use sort of examples from here. It's quite immersive. It's very, very useful. We have on-ground staff and we've been running it for a number of years now, and it's proven quite useful. So if you're struggling to find opportunities, if you scan those codes, you can also get in contact with us via email or call our number as well. We're happy to discuss that with you. But I put the code in the chat. It's experience 150 just to let you know again, but you can scan those QR codes or screenshot them now and then come back to later on. Okay.
Awesome. Okay. Someone's just asked me a question about the UCAT cycle and what I mean by you can sit it more than once. So every year, every academic year is a new application cycle. You can apply once in that year and you can sit the UCAT once in that year. You can resit the UCAT in following years, in following application cycles. Can the thumbs up in the bottom of the screen be stopped? Very distracting. Unfortunately, that's not something I can stop. It's just a function of Menti. Okay. So key dates that you need to keep aware of, and please put them in your diary now, because I know if I didn't, I would forget them. 14th of May, that's already been and gone, but your UCAT account creation opens. If you have not already created your account, do that today, okay? You can think about looking at the bursary and access arrangement options if you need them as well. So things like extra time or a quieter room. You'll know what your exam arrangements typically are in school. They can apply for UCAT as well, but you need to do that application process, and preferably as soon as possible. 18th of June. This is when booking opens. Now, there are always a certain number of slots given for every day during the period of time that UCAT is sat. If you are very particular about a date you want because you're going on a holiday or something, book as soon as possible. As soon as that opens, you want to be booking if you're concerned about dates. Okay. The first day of testing will be the 8th of July. Your access arrangement deadline is the 15th of September. Okay. If you're going to sit the exam before then, you should submit your application before then. 19th of September, this is your booking deadline, so you have to have booked your test by that point, and you cannot create an account beyond that point. Okay. 26th of September is your last opportunity for test day. Okay. And your bursary application deadline is the day after. So this is retrospective. If you are applying for bursary, at least how I did it when I at the exam. You pay for it upfront and then they reimburse you afterwards. Okay. And then UCAT deadlines there as well. It says results for Liberty University early November. That is true, but you also on the day, they will print out the results for you. So you will know on the day how well you did. And that can help inform your application process. It can be a little bit more strategic. So as we were saying earlier, how long does it take to prepare for UCAT? Well, as I mentioned, it's going to vary between students, but don't leave it to the last minute. Okay. I would say book your exam date, but make sure that you are giving yourself probably 2, 3 months of consistent little pieces of revision, and then 2 weeks before the exam, intensive practice. Okay. This gives you a really good foundation and time to mess around, figure out what's not working for you, what is working for you, and a decent amount of practice before you actually sit the exam. Okay. And that's not to say if you haven't started now already that you're going to fail. That's not the case at all. You can still do really well. The point is, this is the general guidance. Now, how do we break down the sections of UCAT? We said there are 5. There's verbal reasoning, decision making, quantitative reasoning, abstract reasoning, and situational judgment. And the number of questions per section varies, but the weighting of each section in terms of overall score is the same. Verbal reasoning, there are 44 questions and 21 minutes. Very, very quick paced, and it tends to be the passage length that people struggle with. So general tip, practice reading, just try and read a page a day of a book because that will speed up your reading and that will help. Decision making, this is more problem solving. You get 29 questions, 31 minutes, a little bit more time for that one. And they tend to be shorter questions, a little bit more working time. Quantitative reasoning, 36 questions, 25 minutes, a little bit less time again. Make sure you know how to use the UCAT calculator. Abstract reasoning, this is extremely fast paced. But the point is, if you are able to work out a pattern, the follow-up question should be fairly straightforward. And situational judgment, this one you've got, again, a lot of questions, but it's about training your gut instinct. In total, it's 115 minutes, just over an hour and 55 minutes. Yes. Okay, let me just check the chat. Okay, I think Asha's responding to messages, so we'll just keep going. Verbal reasoning then. This is what it can look like. You will get a question, and it will be on the right-hand side of the page, in bold, followed by some answer options. On the left-hand side, you will have a passage, and you can see it can be quite long. You do not have a lot of time to answer this question, but you will have about 4 or 5 questions for the same passage, okay? Now, feel free to have a go at this. I'd love to see what people are thinking the answer might be. If you want to put your ideas in the chat, and I will start sort of breaking down how I might approach it. I'll give you 30 seconds to have a go first, and then I'll talk it through. Okay, I think we're getting some answers through. So you can't tell. Some people are saying true. Okay. So first things first, I need to know roughly what's going on in this passage. So I want to skim read it, look for key words, key dates. And by key, I mean things that don't occur frequently. So this is a key date, sports conference, government, Olympic, 6 months after game. Okay. Now, if I then look at this is a quote from someone involved. Another quote, 1 billion, community sport, NHS, digital sports partnership, PE, SSP. Acronyms are really good to try and focus on. So what I know is we have a bit of setup to do with time and what this is about. We have some quotes from important government people, and we have this idea of a school sports partnership. I can then look at the question. The Olympic Games began in August 2012. Okay, so we're looking for a date. So I'm going to immediately try this first paragraph. 17th of February, annual sports conference, accused of turning his back and undermining Olympic legacy 6 months after the Games. 6 months before February is going to be August. However, we do not know whether or not after the Games is referring to after the Games began or after the Games finished. So the answer here is cannot tell. Okay. Hope that makes sense to everybody. And this is giving you a little flavour of how we might approach a long passage. Have a skim read, look for dates, places, acronyms, and then look at your question and ask yourself, where would that fit within my passage? Okay. So that's a flavour of verbal reasoning. The challenge is it's 44 questions in 21 minutes. It's not enough time to read the full passage. You have got 5 types of question you can come up with. The one we just did was true, false, can't tell. And I'd say this is probably the most common type. You then have type 1 and 2 general, which we'll talk about in another webinar later down. Writer questions. So what was the writer thinking? What was the intention, etc. And reverse questions. Just to make sure everyone's aware these are types that come up. Okay, that's a very brief introduction to your verbal reasoning. Let's think about decision making then. Here's an example question. I'm going to give you, again, about a minute to try and answer this one, and then I'll talk it through. We have a little bit of variation in the answers this time, which is interesting. But let's talk it through. So we have Professor MG's tutorial, 10 students, okay? 2 rows, 5 students per row. I'm looking straight away at that top table, okay? So I know that's the situation. The question is asking me which of the following must be true. So I need to work out something about this arrangement. Let's read the rest of the stem. Of the 4 girls in the class, 3 sit adjacent to each other in the back row. The 4th girl sits in the front left corner of the classroom, and that's Cassidy. Cassidy must sit as far away as possible from Amy. Okay. So Cassidy sits at the front left corner. So front left. Okay. That's not left. Ignore it for a moment. Amy's got to be as far away as possible. So Amy's going to be over here. Okay. And there's going to be 3 girls next to each other. So I'm going to say that that's girl, girl, girl. Okay. Ian and Gregory sit in the front row, but not in the middle. Okay. So they're not going to be here and here. They're going to be somewhere else. And Mark and Jeremy sit as far away from each other as possible. Well, if they're as far away from each other as possible, the furthest distance they can sit from each other is here and here. We don't know which one's the front row, but I'm going to take it as this situation. We can flip it and it'd be the same in theory, okay? So Ian slash Greg, Ian slash Greg, okay? And then we're going to have Mark slash Jeremy, Mark slash Jeremy. And that's going through all this information that we have. So which of the following must be true? We're asking a must question. So something we cannot, something that has to be obvious here, okay? So C is the correct answer. We are thinking about, sorry, lost mentally now. There we go. Many of you got this answer correct. Greg can't sit adjacent to Cassidy because that means next to. Well, he could, but we can't tell that for sure. Okay, we all know it could be Ian and could be Greg, so we know that one's not true. Mark sits directly in front of Amy. Well, that could be true, but it may be Jeremy. Cassidy sits in front of Jeremy. Again, this could be true, but we don't know for certain. Okay, and beside again is about being adjacent to. Okay, I hope that made sense to everyone. Okay. Did not mean to do that. So that's an example of decision making. Someone asked me about how do you do it quicker. And I understand that, but we will get there. The point is you need to practice the types of questions you can come across and how to then add the information together. To someone who said, but Cassie could sit in front of Mark or Jeremy. Yes, she could sit in front of Mark or Jeremy. But it's because it says must be true. We do not know that she is definitely in front of Jeremy, as you identified she could be in front of Mark. Okay. Quantitative reasoning then. Okay, this is estimation, and this is quite a long question. So I'll give you about a minute to try it, and then we'll talk it through. Amazing. Many of you getting this correct. The answer here is D, the hero of our time. Now, how do we do this quickly? The point of this being an estimation question is to help you prevent spending too long on precise calculations. Okay. So we're being asked for which book is the difference in average number of words completed smallest between the Russian and English versions. Okay. So you can add another column here at the end to work out roughly how many thousands difference is there between the two. Okay. And if we do that, we can then start eliminating options. I won't go through it all today because that will take too much time. But you can start eliminating very clearly options where there isn't the smallest difference. So for example, if we were to look at the Gulag Archipelago, that's quite a large difference between the number of words. Okay, so that's probably not going to be our answer. So there's no point in me doing further calculation on that. Similar with Life of Akum, it's probably not this one either, looking at the options we have, and Crime and Punishment. It's all about narrowing down and then trying to do a couple of calculations. Okay. Someone asked, why is it not the fathers of our time? Is a smaller average number than there is average hero of our time. Without working out the calculation myself, I could not say, but let's have a look. This is probably to do with the average completion rate here. Okay, we'll go through more of these types of questions when we have a specific webinar on quantitative reasoning. Okay, fine. Well done to everyone who got that correct. Okay. Actually, is this what I'm just supposed to hand over?
Yes, so just one more thing, guys. So before we move on to the questions about abstract reasoning and situational judgment, just really quickly, I know some of you might be considering one-to-one tutoring. So if you are looking at that, we do provide help for not just UCAT, but interviews and personal statements. One thing that you can do, like Bobby said, is you can get lots of question banks and prepare from them. It's quite useful. But the one-to-one tutoring, what it really does is it just helps speed up the techniques that you build. A lot of students will learn through trial and error, whereas what we do is we just kind of give you those techniques from the beginning, and we have seen a sort of quicker set progress in students. So when they are preparing with us, compared to students who don't take tutoring, normally they build those techniques a lot quicker, and we do see often most of our students do get within the top 10%. So if any of you are interested and you are looking to do some one-to-one tutoring, you know, if you move on to the next slide, we'll just give you a code if that's all right. So it'll be new trial 50 for the first session. If you want to save this QR code, that will be, we'll just leave it on screen for about like 30 seconds or so. Again, you can get 50% off the first one, and this first session is fully refundable if you don't like it. If you just want to try the tutoring and see if it's for you, then I would highly suggest it.
Okay, great. I'm just going to bust a myth that someone's asked me about in the chat to do with the requirements of A levels if you're a GCSE student studying. You do not have to study maths A level. You have to study biology and chemistry, and maths can be helpful, but it is not necessary. You can study any third subject you want, and to be perfectly honest, what's more important is the grade you get. So if you think you're more likely to be interested and therefore do better in a subject than maths, then do that. There is no reason you shouldn't be able to take psychology, which I think is what the person said, if you want to. Okay. Okay. Fine. Abstract reasoning then. Let's talk about this a bit more. It is pictures. Okay. This is probably why a lot of people look at it and go, oh my goodness, what is going on? You are asked typically to look at two different sets of shapes. This is probably the most common question. Identify the pattern, and then you're given a set of test shapes. Okay. These test shapes, you've then got to decide, do they fit in set A, set B, or neither? Okay. So, can anyone spot the pattern here?
I'll just give you a small hint, guys. If you start with the box with the least number of shapes in set A, and work from there. It'll make it a little easier for you.
So what I'll do is I will put an arrow next to the smallest number of shapes, and we will talk about technique in just a moment. So as Ashley said, you want to pick a set A or B, to look at first. You can pick either, it doesn't matter which. Probably for this one, I'd go for set A because there is one that's got a smaller number. There are mnemonics for abstract reasoning, and we'll discuss it shortly. Someone said that there has to be a triangle in every single box for A. I will ask you this question. Is that true for every single box in A? So for a rule to be true, it must be true for every single box. It cannot be only for some of them. If it's only true for some of them, it's not the actual rule or the pattern. Amazing. So someone has got this one correct. For every two squares, there is a triangle in set A. In set B, for every two squares, there is a circle. Okay. Well done to the person who got that. Amazing. Now, how do I go about figuring that out? How do I even break down this question in the first place? Well, there is an acronym you can use or a mnemonic called SPONKS. I say it's probably an acronym. SPONKS stands for shape, position, orientation, number, color, size. It's a technique and strategy for you to break down the question in front of you. So if I go back to that question, it lets me. We look at first the shapes in each box. We start with the simplest because there are fewer shapes and hopefully fewer distractors that have been put in by the examiners. Well, we see there's a triangle and there's two squares. Okay. So then look at the next least complicated or fewest shapes. Okay. Well, then there's more shapes. Okay. Something else is going on here. You can then think about your position. So does the triangle always have to be in the middle? Well, no, if we look at the next one. Okay. Orientation, does the triangle always have to be pointing up? Possibly. And then so forth with the other options as well. Does that all make sense to everyone? Just give me a thumbs up if you're happy. So the pattern we just identified there was a number pattern. It was to do with the number of shapes correlating to each other. It's number of squares, number of circles, and number of triangles. So far I've got one heart through. Is everyone happy? Someone's asked me what the answer is here. So I didn't go through the answer. But if I just remind you of the pattern, for set A, there is a triangle for every two squares. Okay. Set B, there is a circle for every two squares. So have a go at identifying which set would these test shapes fit into. Okay, so I've given it a go myself. To answer someone's question, said I see all triangles in A and etc. If we look at the first box here, we have one triangle and two squares. We then look at our next one. We have two squares, four squares. We have two triangles. Here again, 1, 2, triangle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 triangles. 1, 2, 1 triangle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 triangles. So this is a 2-to-1 pattern, okay? And it's similar for step B, but instead of triangles, it's circles. So this is what I suggest for the test shapes, and it's for neither, which is very possible. So we don't have the actual question here, so I apologize for that. But it would be question followed by so each of these would be a separate question, but there would be one test shape. It's like having a passage and then several follow-up questions. Okay. Fine. So situational judgment, last section. This is an example, and this is called appropriateness. So this is a type of question within situational judgment. And it's asking you how appropriate is this response in this scenario. It's asking you to look at things from the perspective of you as an individual are a doctor or a medical student. What do you think the right thing to do is in the situation within that context? So have a go at this question. What do you think? Okay, so just so you know a little bit about the marking for situational judgment is a little bit different to everything else. Sections that we've already talked about are scored up to 900 points, whereas situational judgment is banded, and it's really dependent on how many questions you get right and how many questions do you fall on the right side of things. So to explain that a little bit more, if we look at A, B, C, D, you can see that the top two say appropriate, the bottom two say inappropriate. So there's almost like a line here. If you get on the right side of the line of your answer, you get some points. If you get the right answer, you get the maximum points available. Okay. So you can think of it as if you got on the right side of the line, but not quite the right answer, you get half marks compared to getting the full answer. Okay. And then you get bands. So band 4 is least good. Band 1 is excellent, essentially. Most people tend to get between band 2 and 3, I think. And I know for most of my students, they've gotten between band 1 and band 2. Okay. Okay, so the answer here is A. So let's think about why. Scenario is a junior doctor, they're on a ward, and they complete their work efficiently. They have a lot of spare time, they don't find their work very challenging. How appropriate is that response? They ask the consultant doctor if they can spend the spare time they have to help other doctors on the ward who are busier than theirs. Okay. So some people might think, okay, maybe this is not great because they're leaving that ward and therefore there aren't any doctors there, patient safety. Yes. However, they've done the work that they need to do. And they are not just going ahead and leaving the ward without talking to anyone, which could very much put patients at danger, patients at risk. They are speaking to a senior and asking for advice. This is very appropriate. It means that they can go and help where is necessary, but they are not doing it and putting the rest of the team at risk and patients at risk. Okay. If you put B, you probably get half marks because you're on the right side of that line that we were talking about. Would you get the mark if answering B if the correct answer was C? No. So the line, to my knowledge, the line, as I said, is between the sort of yes, great, no, not so great. And then if you're on the right side, that's when the marks fall. Between B and C, I don't believe that you get the mark if you put B and it was actually C because you're still thinking it is the opposite. So it's either appropriate or inappropriate. Don't know if that's worded very well. If it doesn't make sense, let me know and I'll try and rephrase. Okay, so UCAT Live Day. Ashley, is this again one that you'd like to speak about?
Yeah, so guys, we're approaching towards the end. And just one last thing that is quite useful for you students if you are looking to get some help with the UCAT. Now, some of you might not find one-to-one tutoring useful or may not find sort of the weekly classes that we run as useful and prefer like a crash course. But some of you might prefer it on top of the one-to-one tutoring. So this is just a sample schedule that we have for most of our live days during the summer. We run this every Saturday throughout July, August, and September, and throughout the end of this month. So if you wanted to cover a large chunk of the high yield topics with, this is similar to what we've done today, but in sort of a really quick and efficient method, then this is probably for you. It is a little bit more budget friendly than the one-to-one tutoring. And we have got a coupon code for you guys in the next slide if you are looking to book it. And there's a QR code. Bobby, if you can go to the next page, please. You can use that QR code and that the discount code if you want over there. Again, these discount codes I'm giving to you guys is just for the next 24 hours for anyone who's attended today. And like I say, this is a really good group course. It's really good for students who do the one-to-one tutoring and want to consolidate everything towards the end, but also for people who want to study mostly on their own and maybe come to us for a few specific high yield topics to ensure they get the highest mark. It's just everyone learns differently for these things, like we've discussed today. So there'll be different things out there for you. A lot of questions, a lot of students have asked, what resources should I use? We do provide a question bank with this crash course as well, which has 8,000 practice questions, 12 mock exams, and over 100 video tutorials. And we also provide that for free with the tutoring. So you will find, that hopefully that question bank really useful. And those resources should carry you for the entire UCAT. And again, we provide that complimentary with our group classes with the one-to-one tutoring as well. I think, Bobby, just really quickly, because I'm sort of conscious of time as well, you have a webinar after this as well, I believe. So we'll just go on to the Q&A if that's fine, really quickly. But before we go on to that, if you are happy with today's webinar and plan to attend the next few, if you can just take 2 minutes out to leave us a quick set of feedback by scanning that QR code. I'll also leave a link in the chat. But if you're happy to do that, we are picking a couple of students out to get one of the crash courses that we run, the UCAT Live Day, for free. If you can use the same name that you registered with for the webinar for this, then we can basically just email you because you all used your email to register for this. I'll leave the link here as well. So if you just give a couple of minutes for the students to do that. What I'll probably do, Bobby, in this case, is because they have quite a few questions and you've got a webinar to go to.
I don't have a webinar to go to.
Oh, you don't
That's
know?
tomorrow.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I've confused it with Sunday today because Bobby actually does quite a few of our webinars and she's a star for doing them. She's one of our best tutors. So I often just assume that Bobby's doing a webinar at 5 most days when she's actually doing the ones on Sunday and Friday. But anyways, Bobby will be running these throughout the summer and we hopefully will see you guys next week. If you guys can just leave us a review, that'd be much appreciated. And what we'll do, Bobby, is we'll give them a couple of minutes just to do that. Any student who's done that, if you can just leave your name in the chat or just say yes, anything, just say you've done it so I can put your name down. And then we'll move on to the Q&A. That's all right.
Yeah, that would be great. And I'm just going to answer some of the questions from the chat so I can keep up the QR code so people can respond. So someone said, would you recommend taking UCAT and GAMSAT at the same time? So this is a hard question to answer, and I did do this myself. If you're applying for graduate entry, this is where you might do GAMSAT. If you're applying for undergraduate, I don't think I've heard of any undergraduate course requiring GAMSAT. It's quite intense, and I would say that I would try and keep them a few weeks apart at least. So GAMSAT has specific times of the year that it runs, UCAT has specific times of the year. Because they are such different exams, I would recommend trying to have them at least a couple of weeks apart. And also they're quite intense, so you're going to want some time off. Would you say band one in SGT is crucial and can make the difference equal to other sections? Some universities, such as Southampton, I know they really are keen on you doing well on SGT. Others don't really even think about it. So this is going to depend on the university you want to apply to. I'm applying for grad entry. If
I,
anyone wants to ask, sorry.
sorry to interrupt there, Bobby. I actually got a lot of students every year asking me about this. The thing is, did you do the GAMSAT, Bobby, by any chance? I haven't done it myself. I only did the UCAT.
I have. Yeah.
I've looked at it, and it's a monstrosity, to be honest, of an exam. So, I mean, the USMLE exam is about 8 hours long, and somehow an entrance exam to med school is 5.5 hours long or something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's if you're going to do the GAMSAT, my advice is I haven't done it, but it looks like something you have to start earlier with. So if you're planning to do it with the UCAT, definitely manage your time properly. Although
Yeah.
my natural instincts tell me to focus on one exam at a time, but I've seen people do both. But people who do both start with the GAMSAT much earlier and do consistent set of lessons or studying by themselves. And it's something where you need to be very good with your sciences because there's a huge chunk of it that they'll assess you on. And it does go back for some people for like A-level physics and maths. So
Yeah.
that's all I have to say because I speak to students every year around this time who are considering that. And I think Bobby probably has something similar to say.
Yeah. The UCAT is, I think, easier than the GAMSAT. So for me, prioritizing GAMSAT revision early was my strategy, things like Ashley was saying. Particularly because, as someone pointed out in the chat, it does contain A-level physics, and I didn't take A-level physics, so it meant I need to sit down and figure out, okay, am I going to get tutoring for this? Am I going to get some support? And I did actually get some support through Medic Mind with GAMSAT because I was completely lost. It's very similar to BMAT if you ever thought about doing that, which is sort of looking at your chemistry, your biology, your maths, and physics, but it's to a higher level. I would say that there are some parts of UCAT and GAMSAT sort of play on each other. So you've got reading comprehension in both, so verbal reasoning. But yeah, as I just said, I'd say start earlier with GAMSAT. It's a lot of material to cover. It's not just exam technique, which I think UCAT probably is.
Yeah. I'd say a lot of students are asking about the entry requirements for universities. So one thing I'll say is at the current moment, the most recent UCAT scores and the admissions sort of assessment that they do is just being released by universities. But
Yeah.
I do look into these things quite a bit. We have a comparison tool on our website where you can find a lot of this information. It will be updated during the summer as well, so keep an eye on it. But generally speaking, the trend is that UCAT requirements are going higher and higher. And it's even if you've got all eights and nines, some universities will want a high UCAT score. There is a university for everyone. So even if you're on the lower end of scores, you can strategically apply. All I'll say for now, because we can go down a rabbit hole with this conversation, but there's three different types of universities for the UCAT. One that will purely look at the UCAT score as long as you meet the minimum requirements, and they'll most likely choose a cutoff score, they call it. The second type will look at a combination of your GCSEs and UCAT score and combine both of them. And then they'll choose people off the top of the list, top 500 they'll interview, for example. Third type are a bit ambiguous and they'll just look at your application overall. At the moment, I think Bobby got a few questions about Oxford and Cambridge, how they're going to use the UCAT. Unfortunately, we don't have much information on that at the minute. It's all speculation. We do anticipate, though, most people who will apply there will have very good academic scores, so top GCSEs and A levels, so you can anticipate high UCAT scores too,
Yeah.
which was the same for the BMAT.
I guess just to add on to that about Oxford and Cambridge, I know at least for Oxford, the way that they do their applications is a lot more holistic. It's not just your scores, but they take into consideration both your GCSE and your A-level scores. Sorry, GCSE, A-level, and also they will probably take in UCAT in the same way they put BMAT in. So it's not just one isolated score. They're looking at all of them. Um, but that being said, the higher your UCAT score, the much better chance you're going to have to get into that university. If you're someone who's from sort of a background where your school isn't very active academically, or you're from sort of a lower background, socioeconomically, there are some ways of getting contextual offers. So I had a contextual offer when I first applied to medicine, because I'm a graduate student. So it's it's something you can think about. Please don't stress too much if you're not getting, 3,000 scores in UCAT. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's what we can do. What you can also do at the time as well. We will run webinars for this sort of thing as well for students, just to inform you of what information we have for the year. With the one-to-one tutoring, we can also help you decide which universities too. So if you need help from people like me and Bobby, we can support you for that. And just to let you guys know, the session is recorded. It'll be on our YouTube channel. So if you just search YouTube Medic Mind, ideally subscribe to us, you'll see future webinars there as well and get alerts for them. Just click that bell icon. That, you know, feel like a YouTuber saying that, but if you just go ahead and do that, and you'll get notifications every time we're running a webinar, really. I think it will end it here today, if that's fine. A big round of applause to Bobby, and thank you so much for hosting today, Bobby, and thank you everyone for joining. Hopefully we'll see you all next week. And yeah, if you want to ask us any questions, just hold back till next week, and we'll get through them then as well. But we'll see you then, okay?
Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely week.
Bye.
Bye.